They control the weather. They mine the oceans. They control volcanoes. They control earthquakes.
Last year, I confronted Heizo Takenaka, the former Japanese finance minister, over why he handed over control of the Japanese financial system to a group of American and European oligarchs. He and his envoy told me that it was because Japan had been threatened by an earthquake machine. I did not believe it at the time. However, when I started exposing some of their doings, I was told by the Japanese security police that because of what I had said on places like Rense.com, that Niigata City was going to be hit by an earthquake. 2 days later, Japan's largest nuclear reactor was the exact epicenter of 2 earthquakes, both 6.8 in magnitude. Japan just had a very, very friendly summit meeting with China where the emperor met the Chinese leader 3 times.
There is a possibility a part of Japan will sink. It will not be an accident. It will be created by the world government.
Tonight, breaking news, Japan's tsunami disaster. A huge quake triggers chaos as people flee swaying buildings and city fires.
That was too much of a coincidence for me. So I started doing research and found out about HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. And I realized that they really did know how to make earthquakes. And they do it by shooting a 1 billion watt microwave into the ionosphere, which is the part of the atmosphere that has a lot of energy in it. That pushes the ionosphere up into outer space, and then it rebounds. And the way it rebounds can cause earthquakes. Just like an opera singer can break a glass by singing at a certain level, or by dragging your fingernails on a blackboard, you feel a weird sensation. If they adjust the vibration for the rock underneath their target site, they can do that. The same machine can also heat up subterranean water to cause earthquakes. And remember, a 1 billion watt microwave. What does microwave do to water? It heats it up. Now imagine if you put 1 billion watts into a tropical storm. You could make it much bigger.
3 hurricanes, 3 of them at one time.
And you could change the direction it flows in. You know how there's high pressure zones and low pressure zones. Well, high is hot and low is cold. And the hot flows into the cold. And vice versa, and there's more of the cold. So they can heat up an area and cause it to flow into a next door area. In other words, these people are capable of creating the cyclone that hit Myanmar, the tsunami that hit Indonesia, and the earthquake that hit China. The tsunami in Indonesia was caused by them, and there's a good chance because the earthquakes seem to be politically timed. They asked the Indonesian government to open the Straits of Malacca and to join in the fight against terrorism, and they refused. What happened? There was a tsunami, and suddenly they cooperated. In Myanmar, they are about to have an election, and immediately before the election it came. And guess what? Just conveniently, the U.S., British, and French navies are standing by with food supplies. It should take a couple of weeks to get there. What were they doing there already?
This is a very serious earthquake, an 8.7 magnitude earthquake which struck off the west coast of North Sumatra. So they are the details that we do have at the moment. I do believe that it has just gone 4:30 p.m. in Indonesia, and we are still waiting on details as to what the extent of damage has occurred.
And Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez has once again accused the United States of playing God. But this time it's Haiti's disastrous earthquake that he thinks the U.S. was behind. Spanish newspaper ABC quotes Chavez as saying that the U.S. Navy launched a weapon capable of inducing a powerful earthquake off the shore of Haiti. He adds that this time it was only a drill, and the final target is destroying and taking over Iran. The existence of a tectonic weapon has never been proved, but its use is often suspected by conspiracy theorists. For example, the leader of Georgia's Green Party accused Russia of being behind an earthquake on Georgian territory in 2002.
Now, after the earthquakes hit Niigata, a member of the Inagawa crime family, which is based in around the U.S. Yokosuka Air Base, and members of the Inagawa family have told me that their big boss is George Bush Sr. In other words, they work for Skull and Bones. And they invited me to a so-called UFO gathering where they showed me the video of this blob. They told me it was a UFO, but it was obviously, to me anyway, a plasma weapon, or a ball of heat created by something like a billion-watt microwave. And I predicted in my blog that there would be videos of lights found above China before the earthquake, and those videos then appeared on the internet after I predicted they would. And furthermore, a Taiwanese satellite detected a 50% drop in the ionosphere, in the amount of electric energy in the ionosphere above the earthquake zone. Now, a 50% drop would be exactly what would happen with HAARP. It would push the ionosphere up, and then it would slam back down. China had just succeeded in getting India to join with Russia and Brazil and other countries to join the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement or to cooperate with it.
China is targeted because of its investments and offers to build infrastructure in Africa in return for access to petroleum and other strategic raw materials of the African continent. This is considered to be a real no-no.
The horror of Monday's earthquake is starting to unfold. As rescuers push to the heart of the disaster, they're finding entire towns virtually obliterated.
设备思想的人能要抽吧？
这东西是个方向问题，你在其他方向看不到的。
有光线的折射嘛，太阳折射就是用在折射的太阳光嘛，应该就是。
You blew the whistle on what was happening at the South Pole Station in Antarctica. You worked there. What you saw is shocking, and I think shocked a lot of people. People wanted to kind of come out and discredit you and throw water on your story. But you, from the very beginning, were calling attention to the incredible weapons, the directed energy weapons that we had at our disposal at the South Pole Station. Now, the Trump administration came out just recently and admitted that we have weapons that can manipulate space and time. Maybe you can walk us back a little bit here. When you worked at the South Pole Station, what were you doing there, and what did you see? And how big of a weapon are we talking about here? And what are its strengths, and what are governments using it for?
There's a lot to unpack there. Yeah. Basically, my role was I provided maintenance to the facility. In that capacity, I had extreme access to everything that was going on. As I disclosed in Washington, D.C. as a whistleblower, these research projects are actually directed energy weapons systems. I've been trying to get people to pay attention to the high level of technology that's being hidden from us. And there's only a fistful of people like yourself that are willing to engage these topics and consider what might be being hidden from us. In regards to the technology that I found down there, the capacity to generate earthquakes is one of the things going on. Earthquake induction is a very referenceable science that has a lot of money being invested into it for the past couple of decades. So the Christchurch earthquakes that occurred in February of 2011, 2 of them are the responsibility of this equipment that I identified at the South Pole Station.
Now, a once vibrant city brought to its knees in what New Zealand's Prime Minister has called his country's darkest hour. A powerful 6.3 magnitude earthquake hit the New Zealand city of Christchurch.
The quake struck at lunchtime, caught on camera inside this person's home.
We have someone trapped on the building. If you're heading down this way, can you instruct the fire department?
This large office block collapsed on itself.
Okay, just stay away from the edge.
Is the New Zealand government aware that this was caused by the equipment and the machines at the South Pole Station? As the New Zealand government demanded retribution, said, you guys literally destroyed one of our cities. I mean, has there been any, or are they just sort of hands off?
Not to my knowledge. Nobody from the New Zealand government has ever reached out to me. Technically, I have been interviewed by other podcasters and such from New Zealand, Australia, folks that are in the vicinity and question, American tactics, but there does not seem to have been any response from the government.
And I understand it was an accident. When they did the testing of the equipment, it was not meant to happen?
That's what I was initially told, but I questioned the veracity of that as well, with consideration to an email that was apparently released or leaked from Hillary Clinton that was shortly after the event in Christchurch. And I'm paraphrasing, but she had written something to the point of, like, great that the earthquake occurred and on cue. That was the weird part to me. So it was like...
And on cue.
And on cue.
Maybe walk us through, like, when you arrive there, what does this facility look like? What do these weapons look like? What part of the building are the weapons in? Are they underground? Is there a big control center? Can you walk us through exactly what it looks like? And
Absolutely. The elevated station was a relatively new structure when I arrived. It was going from construction to operations and maintenance. And everything does kind of look somewhat spacey when you're in that environment. Like it's like being on Hoth in Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's the backdrop. Things look newfangled and high-end construction because they have to fight the elements so much so. And the elements are ruthless. When you talk about cold and wind and lack of oxygen, you're heartily taxed just doing anything in that environment. But with that being said, upon, initial pass through and stuff and to the general public who simply just goes from compartment to compartment and is limited access, it looks very benign. And yes, the vast majority of the functioning components are embedded in the ice. So there's really nothing to see. The DOMs, 5,160 of them, basketball-sized type items, they're embedded in the ice in a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer array, so you can't see it.
DOMs?
The DOM's about a basketball-sized device that's embedded for the primary purpose of the detecting of neutrinos, but then the secondary aspect is the ability to also transmit, which adds up to very high power levels and in the form of what appears to be a phased array transmitter. Again, plenty of stuff referenceable on this. Basically, the IceCube neutrino detector array is like another level of magnitude of what we know the HARP array systems to be. So the HARP array sits on the surface of the Earth. It has length and width and is a phased array in and of itself. This just adds depth to it. So it just gives it more magnitudes of capacity for whatever they're doing with it. And whatever they are doing with it is going to get worse because they're currently slated to make that facility, the neutrino detector array, 10 times bigger.
Where? There?
Right there. That facility is going to be expanded upon.
Now, when you were there, you were working for a defense contractor.
Yes, sir.
Raytheon?
Raytheon Polar Services was the subsidiary under Raytheon.
Why does a defense contractor need to be at the South Pole Station?
One of my biggest questions is it goes from Raytheon to Lockheed Martin to PA. Like, why is it always people that manufacture and operate weapons systems seem to get these contracts? There's plenty of other contractors out there that provide the necessary services, but don't make weapons. I don't know why they wouldn't get the contract.
Fascinating. So now they're going to expand this size, 10 times larger.
That's my understanding.
And they already can carry out earthquakes in New Zealand and other spots. First of all, do we know of any other instances besides Christchurch?
My understanding was that, and I did discuss this on the Patrick Bet-David show, there was a circumstance, well, this is a while ago now, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, that President Biden at the time had made some sort of untoward threat towards Turkey, that if they didn't, acquiesce to whatever his decision was, that he'd hit them with an earthquake. I had seen this clip before, that it is extremely hard to find, but it did occur, and they did get hit with an earthquake.
Damage assessments are underway after Turkey was hit by a magnitude 6.1 earthquake just before dawn.
It started with a jolt at 4:08 a.m, but then the shaking turned violent. A magnitude 6.1 earthquake just 10 kilometres deep saw hundreds flee high-rise apartment blocks and roads out of Düzce choked by traffic.
It's so disturbing. So 10 times larger, 10 times larger than what's currently there. So for those who are uninitiated, and I have to plead ignorance on this up until just a few years ago, up until I met you, started really diving into this research, started studying what was happening with the climate engineering, like our friend Dane Wigington, and what's been happening with chemtrails and all of these other things. I was pretty ignorant on it, and it sounded like too out there.
Oh, I totally get it.
That our government is manipulating our weather. They're manipulating climate. They're manipulating ocean levels. They're manipulating lakes and all of this. It sounded crazy until you realize they've got all these HAARP arrays all across the United States. What are they doing? What are these HAARP arrays?
And they're around the world. We're not the only ones with them.
Right. Yeah.
So this is where I get into the conversation of weapons of warfare in a modern age that, it's not the conventional pull a trigger and a bullet comes out of the barrel. This is modern weaponry in a new battlefield. And unfortunately, I think we, the people of this planet, are currently all caught in the crossfire. It's not the walking wounded of old in the conventional warfare where, the battlefield is over there and we send our troops over there. And it's an attrition of resources. The first one to run out of resources loses in that, logistics chain of the battlefield being over there. I think they've circumnavigated the relocation of the battlefield. I think they no longer bother putting the troops in uniform and sending them over there. And now the same activity, which is effectively, outlasting the resources or infrastructure of your enemy, I think they're just attacking them directly now. Instead of, indirectly through the battlefield being remotely located. We're just going directly after resources. We're going directly after infrastructure. And we don't see it going on as people in the battlefield contemporarily.
President Trump the other day just said we have these incredible weapons.
Correct.
So is that we're not going to tell you what these weapons are, but if you mess with us, you may end up with a city that's been destroyed.
Correct. And I think these are the types of conversations that, occur publicly, where there's a face to the conversation. At face value, it means this. There's other people paying attention to those conversations. And I think, just like the systems at South Pole Station, there's primary, secondary, tertiary. So I believe there's other people that listen to those statements that might have been, pre-told that, pay attention when President Trump says this means that. I think there's a lot of these communications that happen publicly that we, the people, don't realize that there's other aspects to the information being relayed.
Forever restless and untethered by concerns of practicality and marketability, Tesla's mind spawned a vast miscellany of odd inventions. Many of these were never developed beyond the concept stage, and the ideas seemed to grow markedly weirder in the final years of Tesla's life. Invention was normally a deliberate process for Tesla, his every intention and goal fully formed before he and his crew lifted a finger. But there were times when he stumbled upon a new discovery by mistake. Tesla performed his first experiments with resonance technology at his New York laboratory by firing up a small oscillator, which caused a minor amount of vibration. Suddenly, an alarmed squad of police officers stormed into the lab, demanding that Tesla stop at once. Manhattan was shaking for miles around. Tesla had not taken into account how resonance waves grow stronger the further they travel from their source. He had unintentionally created what became known as Tesla's earthquake machine.